guest today comes from Canada. She has her own blog and she's an author of true stories and joins me today to talk about love, life and entrepreneurism. Welcome, Maureen. Thank you so much for coming to the show.
Thank you for having me.
And we've got some wonderful books that we're going to talk about, but you know, we've got so much to talk about actually.
We do. We'll likely get off topic.
I think so. So Maureen, first of all, tell us about your work as an author. When did you start to write?
Like every author, I probably started as soon as I could hold a pencil. But what really got me writing was my own husband, who brought me an outline one day with 75 incidents that he maintains made him the man that I married. Now, I met him at 12 years old, so
wow,
I thought,
12.
well, this is interesting. 75 stories. He said, you should write my book. To which I said, you should write your book. And he said, but you're the writer. So he sort of thought I was a writer. Now, I'd written songs, and I'd written lyrics, and I'd written for ads, and I'd been a writer. I had poetry published, but it was awesome to think I might try this. So I took it on, and we have 46 stories published in 2 books now.
Wow. And do you work under your name, Maureen Haddock?
I do.
Yes.
I do.
Again, did you think about changing your name? Because authors often do, don't they? They often have a name that they use for stage or for, you know, to become a writer.
Never occurred to me because I really wanted to use this book in a specific way. It started out to be a book on entrepreneurism because my husband is the adult version of the little boy that was very distracted in school. And I really wanted to use the book and his stories to help other little kids that might be kind of spirited, and maybe their parents, think about the fact that maybe they're just entrepreneurial.
Yes, I mean, entrepreneurs there's many entrepreneurs, but
yes,
it has become, if you like, entrepreneurism has become a word now that people actually like and accept. Yeah. Whereas before you were often perhaps seen as maybe difficult, people who didn't fit in the mould.
Exactly, and it was looked down upon.
Yes, and people embrace it now more, don't they?
Yeah.
But so tell us about how it all began then, writing this one.
Well, it begins when you're married to the person you're going to write about, with the outline. So I figured out which ones I was interested in, and I started interviewing my own husband, whom I knew really, really well. But the
what was
joy,
that like?
It was really cool.
Yeah.
It involved a bit of wine, and a fireplace, quiet evening, and I could get his attention by asking targeted questions because he is entrepreneurial, so you can't let him get distracted. And the joy of it was that I learned the things he did really without analysis. He often just had a vision and followed the picture in his head. So sometimes they are different. And then I would write the story as I had heard it, and then he would say, oh, but you forgot this. Oh, and we should add that. Oh, I remember now. And it would all come. So I would rewrite, and then I would rewrite, and we'd laugh. And then I would take it to an editor who would say, well, that's old school. You don't need that. People can look that up on the internet. And finally, we would come up with the way he remembered the incident. And a lot of them are very naughty. I call them misadventures. But the ending is what charms people, where I say, as the mature wife, what did you learn from that really awkward experience? And his answers are fabulous. That's where the title "Get a Bigger Wagon" came from.
I mean, you've got "Get a Bigger Wagon," and then the next one was "Get an Even Bigger Wagon."
Right.
So tell us about what actually is the subject of the book. I know it's about your husband, but what's it about?
It's all the little misadventures. So let me give you a sample. The title came from a book called "The Delayed Dream." And in that book, this little boy of 8, which he was at the time, I hadn't met him yet at 8, notices the first 3-speed bicycle that ever came into the little town we lived in the prairies of Canada. And you can just vision him, his little face pressed up against the window, and this bike, and suddenly he's got himself on the bike, and he sees himself riding down the creek into the water, and this is going to be his bike, and he's got to do it. He starts immediately collecting bottles, earning money, sweeping, anything he could beg the neighbors to pay him to do, and he worked for his father. Last day before he would buy this goes on for months. The last day, he's got 1 day of picking bottles left. He hauls his wagon, which is his business, this little wagon, as far as he can go. Parents let kids go, you know, 2 and 3 miles from home, not like today. And his bottles are falling off the wagon. So he stores his extra inventory would be the business term, under the Carriganas in the graveyard. And he continues home to get finish the collecting, and runs back to get the inventory, and they've been stolen.
Right.
Now somebody, probably an adult or a teenager, took all the bottles he hid. And of course it's stretched out because the incident has become a story of 4 or 5 pages. They're a good bathroom book though. You can read, depending, you know, on your capacity. So in the end I say, so what did you learn from that? And you'd expect him to say, don't trust people, or don't leave anything for unguarded. And you know what his answer was?
What was it?
Get a bigger wagon.
Yes.
He would have made it home. And this was the philosophy became, don't blame anybody.
Yes.
It's your problem. Start over. Don't be depressed. It's only delayed if you're an entrepreneur. It's never
And again,
over.
that is the mind of an entrepreneur.
It
Rather
is.
than blame, it's they think, well, actually, what can I do to make that better?
Yep. Or what can I do better next time?
And what can I do better next time? Exactly. So the book is kind of mini stories.
Mini stories with little lessons at the end. And to this day, he abides by all of those. He gets his feelings hurt in one. He sets a prairie fire that they innocently did, but they vow in a solemn ceremony. Well, it's dreadful to have a prairie fire where we live because if it's a dry year, it can really wreak havoc on, and it was very serious. But they were playing with matches, and they would get a fire so big that they could stomp out with their rubber boots. And suddenly the wind became the fifth party of the 4 boys, and there was a powerful movement of the fire, and then they knew they had to get it out, which they managed to do. They're very smart little fellows, and they were 8 or 9. But at the end, there's a ceremony where they bury the matches, and there's a meditative pledge between the boys that this shall never happen again.
Because they realised how dangerous and serious that
they
could
could have died. Farm animals. It was serious, but they solved it themselves. And I often think that the books, if you were going to make a short one-liner, it's about freedom for children as a path to entrepreneurism, because kids solve things. They really can. If we let them, they can solve things. Now, it's frightening as parents to think they mightn't solve, but they can, and they did.
And I mean, this was in the 50s. And as you said, 50s and 60s, where children had far, far more freedom than they do now. You would
frightening amount, but it made men of boys.
Yeah, I mean, when I was a little girl myself, you just used to go out and used to play, and then come home when you were hungry.
I know.
And and no one really used to worry about where you are.
And there was no childcare in summer holidays because you took care of yourself.
Exactly. Yes, that's right.
Not the panic today.
Do you feel, Maureen, that that's something that is missing from the children today?
Yes.
Do they miss, do you think? Do the children today not have the opportunity, perhaps, to become independent and to become entrepreneur? Because when you're alone, that's the time when you learn your skills. So
absolutely.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think we have to... honestly, this might be an incorrect thing to say, but I think we hear every bad incident because of media. And I think in the 50s we didn't hear it all right away. We may have heard what happened locally. And bad things did happen, and we got over them sometimes, and sometimes we prevented them. And I'm not for complete non-parenting, but there's an evidence of the parents. By the way, I never call my husband by his name. He's the boy. So he signs his books, Gord the Boy Haddock, and they're known as his books, even though it's my work. It's his life, so we let him call it. But notice my name is on there. Clearly, I want to have the credit.
So when you were writing and you were interviewing your husband, did you discover anything about him that you perhaps didn't know?
Yes, mostly that everything I know about him was even stronger as a child. He's modified some of his views over the years, thank goodness. But yeah, I didn't know some of these events. Like, I didn't know that a bunch of boys had gone to the creek and decided, because peer pressure, one boy says, I think we should try frogs' legs today. And before anybody could say, oh, no, and there's all this stuff, he had done a few frogs in, and they were boiling frogs' legs, and then you wouldn't dare not be part of it. So now I think he would just say, nah, not for me.
Yes.
So maybe he's grown
But
past.
that's maturity though,
yes,
isn't it?
But peer pressure is a big thing for little boys.
It is. I mean, and when is it particular boys? Do you think boys have a lot more pressure on them than perhaps girls do? Or do you think it's just the same?
I never did anything from peer pressure myself. It could be me, because I often say to him, like, this would never have happened to me, because I would have had more sense.
Yeah.
But there's a creative, I mean, I'm fairly entrepreneurial, but I made a really good wife for an entrepreneur, because I have zero fear of losing everything and starting again, as long as I have my husband, whom I really, you know, need in my life. So I wouldn't be so, you know, bold.
So the material things, if you lost the house, if you lost
well, we've done it several times. You
living
know,
with an entrepreneur.
Yeah, it's like, you know, so it's get a bigger wagon or get another wagon.
We've got to get another wagon now.
Yeah, get another job or take a real job for a while, and then and that's, I think, where the bad reputation came from for entrepreneurs, is that they didn't have a real job.
And maybe seen as risk takers.
Yes, yes, but they aren't really, you know. They really check out things. They might want to do something emotionally, but a real entrepreneur then does the work to find out if they're on the right track.
So does the research.
But intuition is huge. You know how we as women take credit for a woman's intuition? Entrepreneurs, male or female, have off the radar intuition, like crazy good at knowing, yes, I should be there, or no. And when there's one story in the Blue Book here where Gord does not want to play trumpet. He wanted drums, and it doesn't everybody, but anyway, for him it was just, he was just so upset, and he got that feeling, that nauseous feeling he gets when he shouldn't do something, and he started skipping out, and he never did play trumpet.
Really?
But his mother never knew that he wasn't going. He would hide in the snowbanks at the 40 below weather.
Yeah.
Like, this is a child I'm not sure I could have raised, you know. Lots of people have said, I don't think I could have married him, and I'm good at that.
Now, over the years, have you seen the entrepreneurism still in your husband?
Oh, totally. Oh, my goodness. Serial. There's a name for what Gord is. He's not like the... And I disagree with the definition of entrepreneurism. I don't think it's about how much money you earn at all. I think it's about being self-sufficient all your life. It's an independence. But Gord's a serial entrepreneur, so when things get moving perfectly, and he's done all of the work on it, it's time to sell it and get something else, because he likes the challenge.
Yes, that's it. But again, do you think that keeps you younger, having those challenges in your life?
Well, I think what keeps you young,
entrepreneur,
yeah.
You know, do you think time to
can give you white hair, as you've noticed. But I think what it does is keep you never bored, so always interested. And I think what makes you seem young, even when you're quite older, is energy. So if you have energy, people see past everything to the inner excitement, which comes of something new, right?
Absolutely. And what about when you're living together? What's the things that your husband does that you think every day, you know?
He's my guy. Oh, I have coffee. I have coffee delivered to me every morning, and he has a coffee ceremony that he makes it with great. It's sort of his waking up, and then he decides where in our house we will sit, because we have two possible views, and it's based on whether the sun is up or if it's the dark time. In the winter, it's dark.
It's very dark.
We're at work before it gets bright, so the coffee will be looking at stars and satellites. And what I like is soft music, which he agrees to, and never negative comment over coffee. It's all got to be positive, or you just sit against each other quietly.
That's lovely. Yeah. And when you're together, do you kind of bounce off each other? Constant. Does he bounce off his ideas to you and think, oh, what do you think about this? Or yes.
It surprised me when we were early married, because I'm a school teacher by trade, and then when you marry an entrepreneur, you soon become an entrepreneur, because you have to join it or leave it.
Did you realise he was an entrepreneur when you married him?
Not as much as I did as time went on. And he started out in a job with an oil company, and he just felt so structured. And he's the guy. They dream. They live in their heads. Entrepreneurs live in their heads a lot. I'm quite lucky that we found a way that he could also live in my head, or we could share our heads. It would be very lonesome if we didn't have that. But he started quite young, sitting me down, even when the children were little, and going over what he was thinking and seeing if I would be in agreement, which I was, number one, quite flattered, and number 2, surprised, because business was not my training. But obviously he thought that I was a kindred spirit and we were in it together. So that does help. If you're going to marry one of these fellows, you want to lay that out. Yes. But there's nothing more fun if you get it working right,
yes,
you know.
Absolutely. I mean, it's been an adventure. And you've not just written these books, you've written other books as well.
I have. Well, there's another book coming out, See, I consider these 2 books my college degree in the dramatization of the true story. Right. Everything is true in these stories, and now I've taken on an escape story. We have a very successful young couple in Saskatoon, where I live, who escaped Iraq. They're Catholic. They wanted to marry for love, but the culture wanted to arrange, and from 2 very different parts of Iraq, so different philosophies, and they are successful entrepreneurs now in Canada, and their own kids don't know, and 3 of their children came over with them. They were 3 years with lost paperwork and settled in various countries, roaming about, and finally, when they got here, like she said, I fell down and kissed the earth.
Oh, how lovely. So you're writing a story.
Of their life story.
Of their life story. So that's going to be very
it's been
interesting.
a learning curve.
And as a writer, you know, because you do a blog as well, don't you?
I do.
Maureen? So
that's my favorite thing.
I was going to say, tell us about that.
Well,
what
it's
do
my
you blog
story.
About? Is it you?
No, it's called From the Cookie Jar, and you can get on it by going to the Get a Bigger Wagon.
That's a great title, From the Cookie Jar.
From the Cookie Jar, because 1/3 will be recipes, because I love cooking and I love to talk about it, and I want it to be recipes of the 50s and 60s kind of reworked for our present day. So there's a lot of stories around the old recipes and fun stuff. 1/3 ideas, because I'm a grandmother now and you do have a few ideas you want to share. And there's new ideas that just amaze me I like to talk about. And then 1/3 memories, and that's just a potpourri of things, but I hope to write my experiences. And my latest one was about the day my house burnt down, and my mother sent me over to her friend's house, but her son was my bully. And I had a dreadful few weeks of severe black and bluing of my body, and I learned a secret during the burning down of my house that helped me deal with my bully. And so I'd love it if your readers would not just sign up and read that, but leave a comment, because it left people quite quiet, unless they're summer and no one read it. I got three comments on that blog that said it should be a book. It should be a chapter in a book, which would encourage me to maybe do my stories. But, you know, girls in the 50s, or this girl, didn't quite have the freedom of the boy she married.
And so they can contact you through your blog.
Oh, yes.
And leave comments. And you like that. You
I love the comments, yes. And there's a contact on the website and the blog.
And presumably from all over the world. People contact you.
I do. I have many British readers who have, I was surprised that you would find this book, because it's very prairie. Yes. But a British fellow just told me on Saturday at the match, the Saddlers match, which we've never seen anything like that before. That was really exciting. He told me that he loved the story about the horse, where the boy thinks he can ride because he's seen it on television. There's a bit of fibbing in this book, like, yes, I can do that. And he said he did the same thing. He took a racehorse out of someone's stable and thought, I can ride that. And it was not such a good idea. So if everyone who read 1 or 2 of my stories could turn around and tell their own stories, that would be the best ever. And
what's the future for you, Maureen? Because obviously you live with an entrepreneur, you're very entrepreneurial yourself. Yes. How do you see your future? What would you like to do? Is there anything that you want to do that you haven't yet done?
No, I'm very happy doing what I'm doing. I always want to be writing. I will, you know, there's always another project. Yeah, another project in the works. I'd like to maybe have more time, because we're in lots of businesses at the moment, and there's work for me in those businesses. So I don't get probably as much time on my projects.
Yes, and I mean, it takes you around the world. I mean,
it does.
You're here.
Look at this.
Yes, you're here
I'm
on
here.
Cuppa TV, which is wonderful. And so the future then will really be continuing what you're doing.
Yes, I'm in schools a lot with these stories, and I love that. And they invite me to talk about blogging, because I don't know what your curriculum here is like. In grade 3 in Canada, at least in Saskatchewan, children are learning the importance of not writing anything as a blog unless you are sure you want that there 20 years from now. Like the cautionary tale.
Absolutely.
And then why would anybody read it? And they ask me about titles. But those children do a classroom blog in grade 3. It's awesome, really.
Well, Maureen, we've got to leave you there, I'm afraid, but thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure to meet you.
It's been delightful.
Thank you.